Okay, so let's kind of hit a restart because we weren't recording at the time. All right, so we're jumping to chapter 10 because we want to stay in the middle of like learning about this. And since that's what this chapter is all about, we're just going to roll right into it. So, all right, now, adding decimals, as you all did on that assignment, that NTI assignment, the reason why it felt pretty simple for most of you was because they actually made it easy for you because they already had everything lined up for you. So really, all you had to do when you solved this stuff was just add numbers. And you started learning how to add numbers in kindergarten, I think. And by the time you were like second grade, you were pretty much a pro at it. And you knew how to add. And then by like middle of second grade, it was like, okay, now that you know how to add, let's move into what's next, which is subtracting. So you started learning how to subtract numbers. And now you're fifth grade, and adding and subtracting should be a piece of cake. Should be simple. But every single year, when fifth graders do adding decimals, never does everybody get 100. So how come something that's supposed to be so simple is something that people can't get 100 on? Olivia. Do what? Yeah, maybe they transferred things wrong. They wrote down the wrong numbers when they were trying to add. Hallie. They don't line things up correctly. Yeah. What else? Emily. They go too quick, which is a really big thing. Yeah. What else?
They put the decimal in the wrong spot.
Put the decimal in the wrong position.
They think it's so easy that they just kind of rush through it, and they think they're so good. They just kind of
That's what I think it really comes down to. Thinking that this stuff is so easy that you really don't think when you do it. And that's when mistakes happen. So I shared with some of the other classes a personal story. You know, as grown-ups, we'll say things a lot like, I took that for granted. And I don't even know if kids really know what that means. But basically what that's saying is that sometimes you think something's going to be so simple that then it turns out to not be that easy. Like right now, Brady's sister Lucy, she's a volleyball player, and they are trying to win the biggest volleyball game of their whole high school playing years, which is they want to be the state volleyball champions. But the only way to get there is you have to win games. They're in a tournament now, and when they lose, their season is finished, and they're done. And the other night, they played a volleyball game, and the team they were playing wasn't any good. And Lucy's team almost lost. And afterwards, the coach was very angry at the team and said, "What's the deal?" And you know what they all said? They didn't show up ready to play. And do you know what that means? What's it mean, Max?
They didn't take them as they need to try their best even when you play the worst teams.
They thought that just because the team wasn't any good that they were just going to get to walk into the gym and be champions. So they didn't try their hardest, they didn't do their best. So sometimes that happens with you all with math. You think this is so easy that you don't even try your hardest. You don't think as hard as you would if you were doing division. And so mistakes happen. And you do goofy stuff. And before you know it, you got wrong answers. I asked you before we checked that decimal paper, how many of you thought this was easy? Everybody raised their hand. Now I'm going to ask you how many of you got 100. Look, not everybody. So something that was so easy, why didn't you all get 100? Well, did you notice you did silly mistakes?
Yeah.
But the best part of fixing those silly mistakes is making yourself aware of it. So when Lucy's coach told them that they have to respect their opponent. They have to show up for every game like it's the last game they'll ever play. And you gotta play that hard every single time. When you show up to math class, you gotta try your hardest every single math class, even if it sounds like something that's gonna be simple. Because if you don't, you're gonna make mistakes. So I don't sit here and tell you all to give me eye contact, or to put that away, or stop doing that, or focus here. I don't do that because I want to. I do that because I feel like you're not listening to me if you don't. And for some of you, when you miss things I say, you miss a big part of the stuff you're supposed to learn. So for this whole chapter, if you can learn one thing, it's the most important thing that you need to know in the whole chapter. And it's this. So you have to make sure that you always line up the decimals. If you leave school today, you go home and your parent says, hey, tell me something you learned today. If you learned nothing else, you're going to tell your parent, I learned that I always line up decimals. That is crazy important. So, I don't know if you want to highlight that in your notes, because sometimes highlighters help our brain to think this stuff is important. Maybe you just want to put a star by it. Do whatever you need to do to make yourself know this is critical. If you don't line up the decimals, you're going to have problems. Now, is this a life skill? A life skill is something that when I teach it to you, you're going to need it for the rest of your life.
Yes.
Is this a life skill?
Yes.
Every single day, your parents, every day of their life, they have to line up decimals. How? What is it that they have every day in their life? Allie?
Like, if they have like a check that they need to, or like a bill.
So she's talking about money. I agree, yes. Money is kind of what I'm talking about here, but where would they have to worry about lining up decimals that involves money? Cassidy? Where?
Taxes.
Yeah, well, that's something you have to do, but that's not an everyday thing.
Since
What?
I'm like change.
Playing with change, yes, but I'm still looking for more. I'm looking for more information. Tessa.
Foods.
I'm looking for more.
Bills.
I'm looking for more. No?
Like, you buy things and you have a certain amount of money, so you have to line it up.
Beautiful, go get a piece of candy. Every single day we buy stuff. Every day. We don't do taxes every day. We don't play with cents every day. But every day we buy stuff. I might buy food. I might buy gas. I might have to pay for my water that runs through my house. I might have to pay for the air conditioning that runs through my house. Or the heater that runs through my house. Or the electricity that runs through my house. Every day I'm spending money on something. So you have to know, how do I keep track of the money that I got? So right now you're kids, and kids don't have a lot of responsibilities. But one day, you as a kid is going to grow up and you're going to be an adult. And you're going to have responsibilities just like your parents do. So your parents right now have something called a checking account, right? And that checking account is where they have money that sits at this fancy little bank that takes care of their money for them. Now, we as grown-ups like to put our money in the bank because, well, first off, the bank rewards us sometimes for letting us keep our money there.
Yep.
The bank will give us some free money for having our money there. And we as grown-ups, we like that. So we put our money there. But I also know that if I'm spending money every day, I gotta keep track of how much money I got. So let's just keep it simple. Let's say that I had $100 in my bank. Okay? And let's say today when I leave, I want to go to Speedway because I'm a little bit hungry and I'm going to get myself a drink and a bag of chips. And I don't have any cash. I don't have any money in my pocket. All my money's at the bank. So am I going to run to the bank to get money out before I go to Speedway? Yes or no? No. So how am I going to buy this stuff? I have a card. Now, some of you are thinking of things called credit cards. Credit cards are not what I'm talking about. A credit card is something that the bank owns that you are borrowing that you have to pay back. A debit card, which is what Mason said, is a card that's attached to my bank. And it is a little bitty card that has all my money on it. And I get to spend my money using this card. So I go to Speedway, I buy my chips, I buy my drink, and let's just say that they tell me my total is $5.62. Well, I have to figure out, after I buy this stuff, what am I going to have left? So first off, I have to know, am I going to add or subtract or multiply or divide this $5.62? I'm going to subtract. Because it's money I'm using, I'm taking it out of my bank. So watch what I do here. I'm going to take that $5.62 and I'm going to stick it like that. Wait. So some of you did this to me on your chapter 2 test when I challenged you on that last question. I challenged you and said, how about you add the total of all three of those rocks together? I didn't ask you to estimate. I said, what is the total? So I challenged you to see, could you take each of those rocks' weights and add them all together correctly? Some of you did. Some of you did not. Just like in this mistake here. So if I don't do what my big star on my board says to do, which is always line up my decimals, if I don't, and I just subtract things that I see, I'm going to end up with that as my answer. $43.80.
Not close at all.
Now, if I don't always line up my decimals, my little trip to Speedway is going to look like it cost me about $60, which would be way wrong. So I tell you this whole story because this is a life skill. You must know how to add and subtract decimals. Because when you become a grown-up, you will be in charge of your banks and the money you got in. And you will need to know how much money you're spending every day and what is still sitting at that bank. If you don't take care of your money correctly, your money's going to run out. And then you're going to try to go to the grocery, and are you going to have any money to buy yourself? No. So, if I would have done this correctly, and I lined up my decimals, work it out and tell me what my answer would be. Then you chill for a second and wait for everybody else to work. Tell me what my answer should have been. If I went to the store and I bought some barbecue chips and a soft drink. Good. Now, as you're noticing here, your skills that you were taught in second grade and in first grade with adding and subtracting are all coming back. So if you have forgotten how to subtract, that's going to be a problem. If you forgot how to add, that's going to be a problem. If you forgot how to borrow when there's zeros involved, that's going to be a problem. Does Miss Malone teach you how to subtract using zeros? No. By the time you reach my world, you should already know how to do this. So check and see, were you able to do it? What is $100 minus $5.62? Tessa? What is it?
$94.
I disagree. What is it, Lily? I disagree. What is it?
$94.38. 38 cents?
That's what I agree with. $94.38. So, if you didn't get the number that I got and that Addison got, you gotta check your math. So see, adding decimals and subtracting decimals, it's not that it's that difficult, but you can't forget how to do the stuff the teachers before me taught you how to do. When I worked this problem out, for those of you who are confused why you got this wrong, I have to first line up my decimal. So my decimal would go under my other decimal. My 5 would go in the ones place because it's in the ones place. And the 0 above it is also in the ones place. And then the 6 would go in the tenths and the 2 would go in the hundredths. So now it's time just to do what my second grade teacher taught me how to do. Which is, if I have 0, I can't take 2 away. So I've got to go to the neighbor, but the neighbor has nothing. So I go to the next neighbor. That neighbor has nothing. I go to the next neighbor. Still got nothing. Finally, I made it to a neighbor who has something. This neighbor lets me borrow. The one I borrowed carries all the way down the page until it finally gets where it needed to be. Now I have 10 take away 8 or 2, which is 8. I have 9 take away 6, which is 3. For those of you who had a 4, you must have forgotten to have continued to borrow there. Remember, the little guy we borrowed is traveling down the road until he gets to where he needs to be. And he didn't need to be in the 10th place, he needed to be in the 100th. So then we keep going here, and that's what I am left with. So, okay? So, check yourself and see. It's not that we don't know how to add or subtract, but it's that we forget how to do it. So we can't forget stuff that you've already learned. No homework tonight, we'll keep up with this tomorrow, okay?